Inflation, as measured by the Consumer Price Index, has fallen from 9% in June 2022 down to 2.4% most recently. With inflation moving back toward its 2% inflation target, on September 18th, the Fed cut the federal funds rate by 50 basis points and indicated in its dot plot that it expects to cut rates by a further 200 basis points by the end of 2026. However, since the Fed cut interest rates, the yield on 10-year government bonds has risen by 57 basis points, and the yield on the 30-year fixed mortgage rate has risen by 45 basis points. Why have these market-determined interest rates risen, even though the Fed has just begun a new rate-cutting cycle? The Wall Street Journal provided the answer to that question yesterday. An article entitled "Economists Warn of New Inflation Hazards After Election" summed it up as follows. In recent days, bond yields have risen on expectations that Trump will win the presidency and that his new term would bring higher deficits, inflation, or both. This short video will explain why economists are right to worry. Former President Trump has stated that if he is reelected, he would impose import tariffs of 60% to 100% on all goods entering the United States from China, and tariffs of 10 to 20% on all goods entering the U.S. from all other countries. Last year, the United States imported $3.1 trillion of goods from abroad. Of that amount, $430 billion came from China. The rest, $2.7 trillion, came from other countries. A 60% tariff on Chinese imports would add $258 billion to their cost. A 100% tariff would add $430 billion to their cost. A 10 to 20% tariff on all other imports would add between $265 billion and $530 billion to their cost. The exporting countries don't pay the tariffs. The U.S. companies buying the imports, like Walmart, Apple, and most other large U.S. companies, they pay the tariffs. Those U.S. companies would pass on those costs to their customers by raising the price of those goods in the United States. Therefore, these tariffs would add between $523 billion and $960 billion to the price Americans pay for the things they buy. On a per capita basis, that would amount to somewhere between $1,500 and $2,800 per American per year. Such a large spike in the cost of all imports would drive inflation sharply higher, and higher inflation would force the Fed to begin hiking interest rates again. But this would only be the first round effect. Such high tariffs would force U.S. companies to bring a significant portion of their manufacturing facilities back to the United States and to hire very large numbers of Americans to operate those facilities. But the United States is already at full employment. The unemployment rate is near all-time lows at 4.1%. Since everyone who wants a job already has one, the U.S. companies reshoring would have to pay much higher wages to attract workers. Higher wages would push up prices and inflation. This second round effect would set off a wage push inflation spiral like the one experienced in the early 1970s. 159 million people are currently working in the United States. Former President Trump has stated that he intends to deport 11 million of them, 7% of the total. This would